Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Social Media Church podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Magnuson, and I'm joined today by one of my new friends and somebody who is going to be speaking at the very first ever Social Media Church conference, which is right around the corner. We have Ben Stapley, the weekend experience director at Christ Fellowship in Miami. And Ben, I'm just so excited for you to be here. First time guest on the podcast. Obviously, we're launching the very first ever conference. You're a part of that. Some of you listening are very familiar with Ben. Ben is active in the Facebook groups, puts out a lot of great content, so you might already be familiar with him. But Ben, welcome to the podcast, and maybe for the people who aren't as familiar with you, would you just introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, Aaron, thanks for having me here. I love the content you guys put out on this platform. Looking forward to the conference.
Yes.
Honored to be with some of the all-stars. Looking to share content, but more importantly, learn content from that as well.
Right, yeah,
So you gave a quick overview of myself. I'm the Weekend Experience Director at Christ Fellowship in Miami. We had about 8,000 people pre-COVID, 7 campuses locally, 11 globally, and so that title, right? Some people look at me and give me a puzzled look. What does a weekend experience director do?
Yes.
And real quick, my job is to make sure that we have an incredible experience that is moving people towards Christ from the streets to the seats, and then more importantly, to the screens. Yes. And how do we take that usually that 1 hour long experience that happens on Sunday morning, and how do we extrapolate that over the course of the next week and those other hours that we have at our disposal through incredible platforms like social media. So that's who I am. That's what I get a chance to do, and I work with the incredible teams that pull that off.
Wow, Ben. Yeah, that's really exciting. And I don't know that we've had, excuse me, I don't know that we've had somebody in this realm on this podcast. And you even phrased this really interestingly. Ben and I are, for our listeners, I'm going to have really great questions because sometimes I forget to hit record early enough in the conversation and I find out all the really interesting things, and then I have an interview and we kind of do a regurgitated version. But Ben and I have hopped right in and hit record real early. So there's so many thoughts that are swirling around in my head and that are going to be really practical and helpful for people in all contexts. I want to ask you a little bit about how COVID has changed things, particularly for your role, but we have a gal who sits in a very similar seat, but different seat. You guys both have a similar title, Weekend Experience Director. But what you're focused on is a little bit different. I think we're more focused on the streets to the seats, but you also added in there to the screens. And so you, I think, and especially because of your background, which we'll get into in a little bit before you hopped into ministry, are equipped to take people even from the seats to the screens. And so I'm curious, what all does that encapsulate from the streets to the seats to the screen?
Yeah, even that phrase, I've been toying around with it. I'm trying to keep it clear, but I say from the streets. But that's not our first encounter, by and large, isn't in ours in most churches, isn't because someone just drove by your church,
right,
and they parked in your parking lot, and that's the first encounter with you. Oh, I see a church sign. They have a witty phrase on their marquee that's going to draw me in. Usually the starting point, in fact, is this. It's the screen. It's someone is seeing them on social, is exploring their website, checking out their church online experience, maybe getting a digital invite from a friend, a link to the message that changed their life. And it usually starts nowadays with the screen and goes to the streets, to the seats, to the screens. So for me, I'm trying to see it as the whole cycle, that we're usually starting with digital platforms engaging people, and then inviting them to on-site and online experiences, and then keeping that cycle going within themselves and then with others. How do you invite others towards this journey towards Christ as well, and that discipleship model, so it's not just for yourself, you're not just the end user, but you're encouraging other people.
Yeah,
so for myself, the teams that pull that off, the departments that pull it off, and just to kind of drill down a little farther, would be our guest services, the people who are kind of physically meeting with you when you get on site, then when you get into our experiences, into our auditoriums, that worship, production, creative communications, and then online afterwards. Okay, so this is great. How do we continue to engage people on those online platforms? So those are the major departments that I work with to that end.
Yeah, that's incredible. I don't think DOTS, at least the churches that I've worked with and the church that I'm currently on staff at, One and All in Los Angeles, I don't know. I've never heard of all those teams you just listed off being connected, or at least one person in the middle connecting all of those. But COVID has shown all of us, I say that pre-COVID. Now post-COVID, I see a lot of churches trying to figure that out. Oh man, we should have been talking, or we need to have a bridge that crosses all of these paths. So the natural question I want to ask you, Ben, is were you already thinking this way pre-COVID, or did the pandemic really solidify, okay, yep, this is where the weekend experience pastor needs to go?
Yeah, I was, and that was something I pushed Christ Fellowship towards. Some of my background, just to let you know, I was a church online pastor 3 years before my role here.
Oh, okay.
And so that was something that was close to my heart, saw the value in it, saw the exponential growth the church could move towards 5 years ago. And so that's something that I've been pushing on for a while. Wow. And then, like you're saying, it's super helpful for any church, whatever size it is, mega all the way down to small churches, is to have somebody overseeing that experience that helps the left hand know what the right hand is doing.
That's right.
So it could even be a volunteer, but who's the person who's helping have those conversations and have them across the board. And then the other thing I advocate for as well, just making sure that you have a cohesive experience on-site and online, inside and out, is that person has a seat, hopefully, at the executive level at your church. Or at least they have say in at the, they might not consistently sit there, especially if you're a volunteer, but can they have the lead pastor's ear and advocate for things? Because it's such an important aspect of ministry that if they're just getting marching orders and if all the information is going down to them and they never get a chance to lead up, then they're not going to be successful. And it's too vital for them just to get delegation and marching orders. They need to have say into that as well.
And what are some of those areas? That's great. You guys were thinking about this before. And so, Ben, I know that you're approachable. And so if you're listening to this podcast and you need advice on maybe some of these first steps, and we might get into that a little bit later on this episode, but if we don't, please reach out to Ben. All of the ways to connect with him are in the show notes. And you've probably already thought, as a listener, of somebody who needs to hear this. You can always share this link with somebody that needs to jump in on this conversation. Reach out to Ben, DM him. I'm sure he's got some help. You've been thinking about this a long time. I definitely think, Ben, there's an advantage to having been, and I find even within our organization, people who have been in the online space and thinking about it that are now somewhere else have a different lens that they look at the area they sit in the church. Even if it's not a digital role, they're still thinking digital. And so there's so much value to have just experienced that online world. And I think that's really what COVID brought, is all of us got to experience church through this digital lens. And so as we're coming back, some places faster than others, some parts of the world faster than others, everybody now at least has some sort of a digital tint on the lenses that they look at church and the strategy through. But I'm curious, so as you're talking about creating these strategies and you're talking about it's important for whoever is overseeing or interacting with all of that to have the lead pastor or at least the executive team's ear, what conversations specifically are valuable to have, and what topics are needing to get brought to the lead pastor's attention that maybe, or the lead communicator, that maybe they're not thinking about?
Great question. So two things that I've always had the need to advocate for, and I hear of having conversations again and again. The first one would be details, and the second one would be time. So details. Okay. So where are you going with this message? And I'll give a third. The third would be authority or sign off. So first of all, where are you going with this message? Where are you going with this series? What's the next chapter of our church look like? What's the initiative that we're going to push? So clarity on that. And then time to pull it off. I don't think I've ever heard a creative or somebody designing an experience saying, I had too much time on that. Having more time always helps to that end. And then the last thing I say is authority, because here at the end of the day, not all authority needs to come. Not all decisions need to come from the lead pastor. Right. And in fact, they shouldn't. It's pretty unhealthy if they do. And that's going to stymie your growth, whatever organization that is, a church, a nonprofit, business. So if the lead pastor isn't in a position to give that authority, if the lead pastor is in the position and doesn't have the time to craft that clarity and to find out where they want to go, then they need to delegate that authority to somebody else. Perhaps the person overseeing the experience and saying, hey, you don't know where you want to go for Christmas? That's fine. It's December 1st. I'm going to tell you where we're going for Christmas. Baby Jesus, spoilers, comes
Yes.
to earth. And
Yes.
this is where we're going to go with the experience. And could you
right.
design your message around that? So at the end of the day, not all decisions need to come down from the top, but all decisions need to be made. And so if a lead pastor doesn't have bandwidth, or it isn't wired that way, some lead pastors aren't. They have other passions that they're for, and they want to be led by this person.
That's right.
But at least, so the direction of the decision, where it comes from, is fine. Not making a decision is not fine. And so pushing towards that.
Yeah, no, that's really good, Ben. And I'm sure you probably have tips on even how to have that conversation with the lead pastor. But I also know that what another thing, so many things that we've all learned. Some of us were a little bit more keen to it before the pandemic, but we're all more keen to it after. We just maybe don't know what to do. I don't know of a lot of executive teams that have somebody that's seated there that actually their brain is thinking this way. That's covering the whole scope, digital to physical, and how all of that intertwines. And so, yeah, whoever that is, there, and maybe that person does sit on your executive team already, or is in your church. You just need to maybe redefine their role or give them permission to be looking, to be overseeing something different. But I know that, Ben, that's a huge need that I've seen post-COVID of somebody overseeing the whole process. And sometimes you'll try to cram it all into your communications department, or sometimes you'll try to cram it into the creative. But really, it's many teams that have this desire to be connected by this one person that is overseeing this whole thing start to finish, almost like a project manager. How did you decide on weekend experience, and is it limited to the weekend, or are you kind of looking at the entire week and the whole life and season of the church, what you're talking about, brands, series, all that?
Yeah, it's funny. We were just wrestling. I was wrestling with my lead pastor about this last week, and he was saying to me, he's saying, "Your title is pretty antiquated. Like it's weekend. The weekend is the big thing." He said,
right.
"You design our experiences." And so someday I'll probably drop that from my title. But so to answer your question, yes, it's helpful to see it holistically. Outside of, and we have Saturday, Sunday services, but you might be thinking, oh, this Sunday hour of power, that's my title. Well, no, that is a title. There's 1 hour. Don't miss out on the other ones. But I'm going to challenge, and maybe it's not your assumption, but one of the phrases I heard just, you might not have somebody on that executive team who's thinking digitally, and I would challenge that. I would say they do in all aspects of their life. Where did they book the restaurant reservations? They booked it online. Where do they buy the school supplies for their kid? They booked it online. Where do they order the new pool for outside because it's summer? They did that. It's online. It's online. It's online. And so they're living their life. They just haven't changed that paradigm for I can get all these other services, and there's a service. It's called spiritual development that the church provides. And how does the church provide that service? Through these online platforms. Everyone else is moving here. So even your most senior and seasoned team member on there is probably heavily living life already online. It's just changing their paradigm and kind of to do that aha moment. Look, you've done so much of your work today online, and you've looked for services online. How can we position ourselves to be in that same place, especially in relationship to social, and meet people's spiritual needs there? So it's funny. So I heard somebody make the analogy. They were saying, you take your physical health and you find different ways that you get it, right? You exercise here, you do a yoga video there, you do your yearly checkup, and you kind of piecemeal it together so that you're physically whole across your whole body.
Yes.
And from a spiritual standpoint, well, the only way to get spiritually whole is on site.
Yeah.
You better come on site. That's the only way to do it. And saying, no, there are many avenues here that we can get spiritual wholeness. And online is a very important aspect of it. And utilizing social channels is a very important aspect of it. So just that the same way we wouldn't compartmentalize our physical health. It's only this bottle of vitamins that I can get it from. No, that is a aspect. And make sure that you get all the other aspects of it to be as physically healthy. Let's take that same paradigm perspective with spiritual health and leverage those tools.
Oh, so good, Ben. You got me fired up.
I'll get off my soapbox now.
Yeah, no. Please, I'm gonna help you stand back up. Maybe make it a little bit taller and turn the volume up on your mic, because I want to shift a little bit into what you did even before you were an online pastor. You let me know, and I'm gonna briefly talk about it because we didn't even have a chance to dive fully into it. I want to do that right now with our whole audience listening. But you talked about you were a TV anchor, a producer, those sorts of things in the world of video. And your talk for the conference, give people a preview, is all about photography and building a volunteer team around photography. So more on the creative lens. Exactly what you're talking about, the value of media that is online, that is almost piecemealing together the complete holistic picture of spiritual health. You did that in a professional setting outside of the spiritual world, but in a lot of the same context with being on video, creating digital media to help meet a need in people's lives. Do you just want to, because you're a professional in this space, do you want to kind of talk about and yeah, like I said, stand higher, talk louder into the mic on this soapbox about the importance of digital media, photography, videography, playing a role in people's spiritual lives?
Yeah, so that background, like you said, was vital for me coming into a ministry mindset. And I came into it because I saw a deficit there. So I was storytelling, I was a producer, I was a reporter, I was telling, and then I would go to my church, and 15 years ago, it was pretty subpar in terms of what we were doing locally, and then I would see nationally as well. Yes. And I felt that conviction of saying, hey, I have these storytelling, these production, these artistic talents that I could use within Christendom and help advance the story and the narrative of the gospel and the good news there. And so that's been my heart and been my desire ever since, and to come alongside other churches, other lead pastors, others who are trying to move forward in that and help them do it as well. At the end of the day, I don't know who I stole it from, but it's a great phrase. Like, the best story wins culture. So at the end of the day, we will try to win culture with our systematics and our theology. That's not going to work. You may be able to help a grad student pass a seminary course with that, but at the end of the day, they need to hear stories that they understand, and that will win their hearts. And one of the best ways we can do it is through this. You're talking about the lens, using the lens to tell those stories. Well, because at the end of the day, we usually default to use the lens to promote things, to announce activities and events, which is not bad. I'm not decrying that, but we don't do as good a job to tell stories. And if we do, I'm going to get back into the soapbox. If we do tell stories, Aaron, the stories we tell, we tell half the, we only tell half the stories. We only show one side of the coin. So we'd love to share baptismal stories, right? Someone went from death to life. They're the old to the new. They've been washed and they're now clean. And that's beautiful that God has saved people. But God is also in the process of sanctifying people. We don't like to tell those stories as much in the church because they're a little bit messy, right? It's harder for a church to say, for someone to say, not that I was saved 15 years ago, but in the past 15 days, I've been working with my anger issues. And I'm trying not to yell at my wife anymore. And it's hard because of COVID. We're jammed up together, and I don't know how to do it. But every time that wells up with me, I ask God that He's the Prince of Peace, and that He would reign in my heart, and that helps. Like those are the stories that I want to hear. Those are the stories that I want to showcase.
Because
those
we can
are the
relate
stories that are in my life.
Because because we're going through those stories and we're struggling with those things. And oh man, okay, so I can follow Jesus and feel these things inside and have those moments where I yell at my wife, or I am not nice to my kids, or I'm a terrible friend, or I don't show up on time to work, or whatever the case is. How are you guys telling those stories? How are you? To the extent that Ben wants to be, or is your church a little uncomfortable with it?
I think everybody is, because the disciples were, right. People would accuse Paul. This grace thing, this gospel thing you're saying is ridiculous. It is what? It's not. Yeah, exactly. So I can sin 70 times 70 and I'm still forgiven after that. Yes. Yeah. And so Paul in his day was scandalous. the message of grace and the gospel that he was echoing from Christ. And so you ask that question, you realize it's going to be a scandal. It's going to because it's so easy for us to get back into the cookie cutter and it not to be the relationship but the religion. And when you push into that messiness. So that's one thing. Be comfortable with that. It's going to happen. It's going to be a little bit backlash, but the backlash will pale in comparison to the glory that God receives for it. So be willing to have that thick skin as a leader and say, yes, we are going to this, because that is, well, we can't even get preaching. That is who he is. And if we don't accurately reflect that, when we get to heaven, Jesus is going to say, you told half the story. You didn't showcase me well enough. Really, you knew who I was, but you didn't have the guts to really tell people who I was. And so
that's such a good word, Ben, because God, that is, not to cut you off, but you got me excited. That also reveals a side of God that people are attracted to. That it and just whether they're attracted or not, it reveals a side of God that we are keeping hidden because we're not telling that story. We'll read it in the Bible. We'll talk about King David. We'll talk about all of these people that have failed and have been forgiven by God 7 times, 70 times. But we're not going to talk about who's King David today. Well, we do talk about them in Christian culture. We ridicule them, burn them on the cross, and then cancel them, right? And I just said a lot of hot button things there, but to your point, it's really important to understand that we are all on a sanctification journey. It's not just the baptism. There's so much more to tell. Ben, I want to go into specifically, how are you telling those stories through video and even through photography? You're going to be talking about photography at our conference. People, we want you to attend. You can go to socialmedia.church/conference and register there. It's starting in just a few days. We really want you there to hear Ben and so many other people who are going to be helping you amplify your ministry once you invest into this conference and what they're talking about. But Ben, the value of photography, I know the videography sells itself. We all realize video is important. But I'm curious how you use both, how you create media at scale, because we're talking about, we never felt the pressure to create media and become content producers as churches as we did when this pandemic hit. And now I think a lot of us are like, wow, I can see we need more content, but how is this sustainable? How does it work? So maybe just, I know I talked about a whole bunch of things that just there, but videography, photography in the lens of telling stories, and maybe a little bit about what people can expect from your talk at the conference.
Yeah, great questions. A couple of misnomers that I would remove. First of all, is the bar of entry. So we're talking about videography, right? So people oh gosh, I need a crew, lighting, sound, video. I need a high-end camera. I need a studio. So that's one way to tell a story. But a photo can tell a story as well. So don't think the bar is that high, especially when it comes to photography for entry, for storytelling. The second thing is, make sure you have somebody that curates stories. So I've been a part of this, where you've been in a staff meeting, right? And you'll recap the past weekend, the past Sunday, the services, whatever the big event is, and not just nitpick what went wrong, but celebrate how you saw God at work. And people celebrate, then that life got transformed. This person came up with tears in their eyes, and I had tears in my eyes. Now we all have tears in our eyes. Yeah. And then that story dies there. It doesn't go any further. And so
this is good, Ben. I want to remind everyone listening right now, listen up, because capturing stories is one of the most difficult things for people and organizations to do. Even though there's a lot of stories, it is really difficult and elusive to track those things down. So, Ben, I'm so excited to hear what you're going to say. And our listeners, you need to listen up. This is really key, because you can do a lot of stuff, but if you're not capturing stories, you're missing. Ben, please continue.
So find someone who's going to write that down. It's just even as simple as we literally have a document where we go and it's so-and-so shared a story about this person, and in one sentence description, this is what it is. And then that gives us, when we want to tell that type of story, the divorce. We had somebody who was thinking about that, and then they backed away from it. The marriage isn't perfect, but they're not going through a divorce and we can archive that, and at appropriate time tell those stories. And then even if it's not an appropriate time, it's just, this is a great story about God doing something awesome.
We're in a staff meeting, in one of these weekend follow-up meetings, you have somebody that's charged with, they always have these glasses on, they're always listening, and they're in those meetings adding to that document right then, right there.
Yes, and that's a gold mine for you to pull out down the road. The next thing, we talked about photos not being not having a videographer on staff is not a prerequisite to telling great stories. You can have a photo and someone who can string a couple of sentences together and who articulate it. I haven't followed them in a while. I don't know if they're defunct, and I don't know if all the content is appropriate. But People of New York was a Instagram site that I followed for a while, where it would just be a photo. And it'd be a really captivating couple of paragraphs describing who they were. And I was like, man, talking about great storytelling. They did that really well. And that these people, that you're drawn into their stories. And so you can do that with photos. The next caveat I would give is give it a little bit of time. Give it a little bit of time. Okay. So sometimes you have somebody, right? And they had some revolutionary change in their life. And that was beautiful. That was powerful. But we also know that sometimes it's our spiritual development is maybe 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And sometimes we love to parade that person, right? And we sometimes we do it a little too early. So I'm not saying you got to wait forever, but just be aware of that tension. And that's bit me in the butt in the past, where someone had some transformational experience, and we celebrated that, and it was still a little too early, and they slid back, and it was not that there was egg on our face, but it just. I really bathe those stories in prayer, because it's gonna get me going. When you advance the kingdom of light, the kingdom of darkness pushes back. And so when you tell those stories, do not just tell those stories. Pray over that person, because you are putting them on the enemy's hit list and say, "Oh, God did something powerful in your life. I'm coming at you now." And you not need to story tell for them. You need to pastor them as well, and spiritually protect them through that process.
That's a good
because at the end of the day, you're opening yourselves up to that, and just need to be sensitive to that.
Understanding the weight of the media we're creating. It's not like any other industry. There's no other industry that deals with the power of darkness the way the Church of Jesus Christ does. That's a really good reminder to all of us. Go ahead. Continue, Ben. You're diving in on all of this photography, videography, creating media to tell stories. I'm curious one of the questions I have. I hear photos of New York. That's something that gets thrown around in our organization a little bit. People almost use it as a descriptor of like a photos in New York vibe, where you see a good photo and tell a good story, and it plays well on Instagram. I think our listener base, if you're not familiar with it, look it up. Even if the account or whatever doesn't exist anymore, you can probably see some images on Google at the very least of how this is done. Just beautifully crafted, powerful images, not videos, images with really nice text accompanying it. So that idea, how else can you utilize photos outside of just an Instagram style vibe that we're all used to? Just get people's creative juices flowing here.
Yeah, lots of different ways. You get a sense of who the people are at your church beforehand. So there's one of the things I always cringe at when I see a church is when they use stock photography on the website. So that's not. I would rather see a mediocre amateur photo of your people, other than a high polished one of a perfectly balanced diversity photo that is shot in a studio somewhere. It's clearly not who your church is. Yes. Show me who you are. Yeah. And so utilizing that not just for storytelling, but culture building. This is the type of people we are. This is the type of people we want to become. We would like you to be here. So that is super beneficial to do that. For me also, I like to shoot for emotions and what's the emotional tone of the event that's going on. I personally hate the posed photos. I would much rather see all candid photos everywhere all the time, because I get a sense of what is going on there, not just culturally, but emotionally. So are the people smiling? Are the people welcoming? What's the culture that I'm stepping into? So a lot of people, when they're looking at church, they're coming in with such baggage, and maybe it's their baggage, maybe it's cultural baggage, but they're coming in. Not many people are coming in to organize religion and saying, this is a good thing from the outside. Yes. They're coming in with some baggage there. And for you to remove some of that baggage and to minimize it, you can do that with your photography. And you can show, it looks like these people are normal. I don't see any photos of someone handling snakes or there's some wild experience going on. Yes. But they look like someone like myself. And for me, and they're smiling. It looks like they're welcoming. It looks like they might want to be there. So use those photos to set the culture of who you want to be and who you want to become by highlighting those type of people.
Wow, that's so good. Yeah, Ben, that's really important. And yeah, the stock photography, I hope if you've been a listener of this podcast for a long time, you understand just the value of authenticity, particularly in this day and age, particularly with the up and coming generation. Authenticity matters so much, even if it's sacrificing quality. Authenticity is that important. So thank you for reiterating that, Ben. I'm curious, just as we're kind of rounding third here, headed to home, getting people excited for the conference. Specifically, let's take a moment and just talk about, without spoiling any of the fun things you're going to talk about in your talk at the conference, about volunteers and the really important role that they can play for whoever in your organization is charged with these capturing stories, either literally capturing them so that they can be written down, or capturing them via video, or capturing them with photography. Let's speak to empowering volunteers.
Yeah, there's two sides of this coin. And the first one we oftentimes look at, and it's kind of the duh, and a lot of people push towards it, but the organization, a nonprofit organization, grows on the strength of its volunteer engagement.
Yes.
Church being a great example of that. So how are you utilizing the volunteers within your church? And if you're under the assumption that you just have to pay for this, then you're not going to be able to grow and develop there, especially if you're in a mid-sized church. So how are you able to utilize those volunteers and advance the mission that you feel God is uniquely calling you to in your time and your location? So you utilize volunteers. More importantly, this is where I like to park on, you utilize their giftedness. So for people who are artistically minded, who have creative juices, oftentimes they're sidelined in the church. I don't want to change a diaper. I don't feel comfortable leading a small group. And I guess that's it. I guess I'm just sitting here. And the gifts and the talents that God has given me, the gifts and the talents that he says, if I use them, he will multiply them. I guess they're not actually needed. I guess they're not actually beneficial. And I guess there might be something deficient within me because I don't know how to sing on stage and I don't know how to lead a small group. That is not true. That is not how God has wired all of us. He's given us those unique gifts. And so to give those platforms for those people with those gift mix, you are manifesting the gift mix in them and you are multiplying their effectiveness, what's going to happen in their kingdom. And so find those people, give them those avenues to be engaged. Yes. Again, not just to accomplish the mission, but to call forth who God has designed them to be. And he's given those talents, those creative talents, be it photography, videography, social media, caption writing, all those talents to them in particular. And he wants you to find them and release them. So there's your charge. Go and do it.
That's right. And what I love about this is applicable and executable for anybody listening to this podcast, churches, organizations of any size. We've already established just how vitally important it is to tell stories, utilize these technologies to tell those stories so that the message of the gospel can be advanced across the world. But then actually how you execute is the same for churches and organizations of any size. It's all the same. And we want to make sure that those people don't feel sidelined. We had Phil Cook on a few episodes ago. Phil is also contributing in a similar but different vein to this, specifically looking at creatives for our conference coming up. And so Ben, I'm curious, do you have, and you might talk about this a little bit at your conference, but it's worth it for everybody who does or doesn't attend the conference to hear, how in this season particularly are you managing creatives and maybe some tips on nurturing creatives? Because it is, not only do they get sidelined in some cases, but they're also a unique bunch. I'll say we are a unique bunch of people to manage, especially at a volunteer level. Do you have a few tips that you can throw people's way on just kind of how to maybe start the conversation of empowering them and then keeping them engaged and just managing them that way?
Yeah, there's so many different ways. One of them I'll touch on because it's fresh. I literally just had a team for lunch today over at my place because they're highly relational. I myself am not. They can bust my chops. Hey, this is so uncomfortable with you. I was like, yeah, it is, but I know you need it. And so I want to pour into you and I want to give you this. So it's that's awesome. That's an example, a micro of the macro. Realize they're a little differently wired and meet them where they're at. Another example of that I found, and it could be a sticking point for a lot of LPs XPs that might be listening who like the box and like a framework, realize their ability to describe their spiritual journey may be a little more ambiguous than what you feel comfortable with. Yes. So when did you cross the line? When did you say the finish? I remember asking a photographer that, the description was, tell me about your conversion experience. And it was this one day I woke up and I felt the warmth of Christ with myself, and I knew that his joy and passion was calling me on to become like. And it was theologically correct. It was written in an artistic style, and I had to kind of decode it. Like, does it fit with my boxes? And so just realize that their ability to describe that it's going to be slightly different. And then the other thing in terms of that too is I advocate for, are there places where they can they belong first before they behave? So again, do they have to check all those boxes, or are you comfortable in that? Different churches have different levels of leadership and what they experience, but there are people or great artists in my church that weren't followers of Christ yet. They were still exploring. And I said, that's great. While you explore, can you do that behind the lens as well?
Yes.
We would hugely benefit from your talents. Could you, and engaging them in that artistic community? That was the small group for them, and that is how they found Christ, through the lens, by having a chance to belong in that community.
That is a
before
really good word, Ben. That is such a good word, and I see this play out well, also in an artistic vein. But it's a little, I don't know why it seems easier or more acceptable, is on stage. Not necessarily someone leading worship, but I know at our church we have a lot of musicians that were able to stay employed because we have a lot. We're out here, churches out here in LA. We have a lot of our musicians that are paid on staff. Are doing gigs, at least pre-COVID, doing gigs on the weekend, just sharpening their skills, meeting new people. And there's people that meet, hey, do you want to, like, you're an excellent musician, you're into following Jesus, but maybe you are on that faith journey. Do you want to just come play your guitar or come play drums for us on the weekend at one of our campuses? And that seems to be a little bit of an easier step to take. But for whatever reason, when we're asking them to create graphics or we're asking them to take pictures and be involved or even capture stories, we just rule them out as not, you're on your journey. We can't use you yet. Instead of, and the reason I bring this up is because I've seen so much fruit from our worship department of people who have just, because they're hanging around people who are following Jesus passionately, that does something in them to get them the rest of that way of like, you know what, I'm going to make Jesus my Lord and Savior. And we have an opportunity to do that behind Premiere, behind Photoshop, behind a lens. Like, we have an opportunity to do that in those spaces as well. So I just appreciate you opening that door and encouraging people. Look, they don't have to, or they might articulate it strangely, they don't have to be where you think they have to be around and on these teams of people that are creating Christian media, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
That's great. Ben, do you have any final thoughts on that? And then I'm going to ask you one question. It's something that we started after the social dilemma came out on this podcast. Just so vitally important to talk about the social dilemma and how the role that we have to lead in the social dilemma, because it's not good enough that we say, oh, well, we have this whole problem on social media. Let's just get off because they're out to get us. The answer has to be no. How do we do this sustainably? So before I dive into that, though, Ben, any final thoughts or any final plugs to what we're going to get to hear in a couple days at the conference from you?
Yeah, in terms of a plug for the talk on photography, I'll just frame it just so that people know where we're going. Oftentimes we talk about photography, and we'll maybe zero in on gear, like what's the gear that you need, or we'll talk singularly about how to take photos take photos during the event. But I break it down and I look at, first of all, cast vision as to why your church should invest in this art form, and then what are best practices for photographers, staff, and volunteers before the event, during the event, and then also really vitally after the event. A lot of churches kind of skip on that part, and then the photos they take aren't curated or aren't archivable, and they don't live on beyond that. There's nothing more disappointing for a photographer to shoot an event and then never see them posted. Well, why?
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
I gave you the memory card. Yeah, we didn't have time to do it. So making sure that you had those strong systems in place so that when you do call a volunteer, you're going to maximize their time. They're going to see their work get displayed. and then they're going to be motivated to do it again. So a lot of it's system building on the back end.
Yeah.
So it's a great experience for that volunteer, and they will thrive in number of faithful years of utilizing their skills to that end. That's what I'd say. And then in terms of the social dilemma, man, there's a lot I could go towards. But one of the things that's close to my heart is this. I see it a lot. Is how do we showcase all people and not just the beautiful people? Because at the end of the day, we know that's what sells. Good. We know what gets clicks. Yeah, we know what gets a lot of eyeballs. And then again, there's nothing wrong with beauty. I'm not trying to bemoan that. But sometimes it looks like our churches are for beautiful people or cool people or young people and not all people. And so how do we tactfully not go after clicks through beauty, but go for showcase the diversity and showcase the beauty found in Christ through the diversity that he loves all of us, and we're all precious in his eyes. So maybe I've just seen that a lot recently, and so that's probably a little bit of a hobby horse for me.
Ben, that's great. You took that question in a great direction, and that was free game. I want to ask you another question off this social dilemma. That's so important, and I appreciate you saying that. I think for a lot of us leading this space, that showed us that, wow, I guess I was maybe the only person that was actually aware of what was going on, and all of you are just now realizing how these things work. I guess I naively didn't realize just how steeped in this space, and I don't say this in a braggy way or anybody who's in our circle, Ben, but I thought people understood what Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all of these things were doing and how they hook you, but people didn't. And so I'm glad this documentary came out. But one of the things I want to lead in this space in is digital health. And so how do we, this is our livelihood, this is our jobs, this is what we're thinking about all the time. How do we stay healthy? And so, Ben, from you to our listening audience as a final question, I want you to leave them with one tip or trick that you have implemented in your life. And some of our previous guests have talked about certain settings on their iPhone or certain, just how do you sustainably continue to live in a digital space without burning out, without experiencing some of the pitfalls and scares that the social dilemma revealed?
Yeah, that's going to be tough. This is accountability. I'm going to share what I try to do, and then my wife's going to hear this and say, you're not doing that as well as you say you're doing it, so lies.
Yeah.
So
secret, this is all of us. We're all on a journey, Ben. We're all on a journey.
Elements. It's, not just being saved, you're being sanctified.
That's right.
So for me, some of the standards that I try to apply, just so I don't get into an unhealthy and a toxic place that we saw through that film, was I try not to check social before noon. And I was bad. I was like, alarm would go off and pick up, and I would want that dopamine hit, and let me see all those notifications. Yes. And so that is unhealthy. And so for me, not till noon is one of the rules that I try to apply. And the other one for my wife and I, this is helpful. We've done it for the past 4 years. Is going into Lent is for us, that season is we'll fast from social media. So I'll go and I'll delete. I literally have to delete them off my phone because I do not have the self-discipline that I wish I had. It's a fruit of the Spirit, and I'm trying to develop it. That's right. So I'll delete those off my phone for Lent. I think I actually I had to put them back on because that's when the pandemic hit last year, or I don't. And it's like I actually have to jump in and engage people because so much was going on. But generally speaking. Yeah, I can go for 48 days without social media, and I'm usually a better person, and resets me. That being said, I may go up to biannual with that, because I'm feeling even now this summer, like I think I need a reset, and I think I need to fast from it again. That's really good. So you have a little bit of a reset, and you also have a rule that you try to abide by. We'll let your wife hold you accountable on it. Noon. And I think it's in social media. On the DMs, can't you see when like someone like checks it, And totally. So I have friends who hold me accountable. Like, bro, I saw you. I know you checked this. Accountability is probably a third tip. That's really good, Ben. I just so appreciate your time. I appreciate you contributing to the conference, all of the thoughts that you add into this space for pastors and ministry leaders. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me, Aaron. Yeah. Well, everybody, if you have not, you have a couple days left before this thing goes live. I want to make sure that you are a part of our 3-day conference. You can find all the details at socialmedia.church/conference.
conference. This is going to be a great opportunity for you, and invite your friends, for other leaders in your sphere, to learn how to take your ministry and amplify it on social media. We have almost 50 speakers that are going to be contributing thoughts, all in different areas, similarly focused, but in different areas, covering strategy, content, creative, and platforms over the course of 3 days, so that when you lean in, and this is the only reason we've attached a price tag to it at all, is because we've seen that when people have a little bit of financial currency down on the table, they lean into it harder. And Nils and I are really passionate about the fact that when you do lean in and take these things that Ben and all of the people accompanying him at this conference are going to be talking about, you're going to see the gospel advanced first and foremost, and your ministry thrive on social media. So you don't want to miss this conference. You can register, claim your spot today at socialmedia.church/conference. And until next time, we'll see you all next week. My name's Aaron, and this is the Social Media Church. This is the Social Media Church podcast.